George Bernard Shaw said that the most pathetic people in the world are people who live without hope. He said that in sadness. He said that in a very caring heart. But also, he said that to encourage the world that we need to hope. Hope is the most precious gift that God has given to us, that allows us life, that allows us health, that allows us hope in our future, and that allows us the gift of faith to truly take root in all of our lives. Especially for God's people, hope is the vehicle through which God allows us, as we treasure it and exercise it, allows us to see God in all of our life circumstances. The psychologists have proposed a theory called learned helplessness. It's a very negative theory. Hope is something that people need to have, a very positive thinking that allows us to not only have and feel good about life and ourselves, but when we have hope, when we have a very positive thinking as a habit, we tend to work harder to make the dreams that we have, hopes that we have, to become reality. But on the other hand, when life environment poses all the life's different opportunities that come before us are very negative and very painful, we tend to acquire an attitude of pessimism toward all life circumstances today and in our future. So when our heart is not filled with hope, when our heart is filled with pessimism instead, that things probably won't go very well, then things might not go well, but one of the biggest reasons why things won't go well in your life is because you're going to make it that way. That's why it's called learned helplessness. Instead of cultivating with a positive attitude, it's kind of like a cup half full or cup half empty mentality. People will look at the same cup and say, wow, we still have half cup full of water, have a very positive thinking, feel good about it. But on the other hand, people with pessimism thinking attitudes will look at the same cup and say, wow, the cup is already half empty. So we look at life in these two different extremes, and people from the former will tend to make their lives that much more fruitful, but the latter will, even when the circumstances don't have to be that way, they will be blinded to these things and make sure their lives become something that they already had a very negative attitude about. Sociologists have a similar theory called symbolic interactionism, meaning that our self-identity is formed not as a result of some kind of an innate trait. We're not just born this way. People who are very positive and confident, people who are very pessimistic thinking and thinking always negative about every life circumstances, they're not born that way. It's in our dialogical relationship with the environment that we live in, and dialogical relationship with other people who we think they must look at us. And we learn from that and look at ourselves that way. And we make a decision about how much and how confident, how hope-filled life that I can live, or how none of these things will matter in my life. They might really matter in other people's lives, but all these wonderful things in the world, they don't really talk about me. I am a very poor person. I have no will. I am always sick. I don't have much hope for tomorrow. We attain this kind of self-identity and life outlook as a result of this dialogical relationship. We do this subconsciously with the environment that we are living in, which include ourselves and other people that we have relationship with. So hope is a very, very powerful thing. In a very positive way, it's a powerful thing, but in a very negative way, if you don't have hope Instead, if you have pessimism about everything in life, that's also very destructive and powerfully destructive. Martin Luther King, of course, lived in an era, especially as a result of being the voice of peace and being the voice of freedom, being the voice of equality. It was not an easy life, but he insisted, relying on God's word. Even though the road looks rough for people who choose to insist on God's peace and God's gift of freedom and equality among his people, there will be light at the end of a tunnel. There is great power in people who have hope. There is great power in people who choose to think positively in all life circumstances. Nelson Mandela is another world-famous person in contemporary world history. He became the president of South Africa. But all the way leading up to that point in his life, he spent 1/3 of his life in prison. And at one point, for 27 years straight, he was in prison. As a result of being the mouthpiece for human equality and speaking against the policy, then the government's policy of segregation according to race. He spoke against that, and he did his best to change the society and the peoples that he loved. As a result of that, his life was truly very, very difficult. Once again, 1/3 of his life was spent in prison. But he spent 1/3 of his life in a very positive, constructive way. He studied through a long-distance program. He attained degrees from London University about law and about social justice, about psychology, about how to help his people. He didn't know how God was going to use him, but while he was waiting, even in prison, he cultivated himself to be used in a very positive way, be an agent of hope in the people that he loved. He prepared himself. And as a result of his effort and God's blessing and the people and their effort, he became the first black president of South Africa. He said many, many famous things, but one of the most famous proverbs that he had spoken, I really like as a favorite, is that he said, many people in facing trouble, they fall down. But people who choose to harbor hope in their souls will never, never fall. This morning, what are the problems that you have? What are the hopes do you have that you have to overcome these problems? All these different examples of having hope are very, very important. But for God's people, we need to also ask the question, where am I directing my hope? What is the source of my hope? And my hope for God's people always has to be in God and His Word. It is our absolute trust in God and His Word and our absolute choice to be obedient, to adhere to God and His Word. That is the source of our hope. There are many things in the world that will pose reasons for hope, but they are all conditional and they're all time and space circumstance bound. But God promises us that He will always be with us. Just like the responsive reading that we had read. He never, ever sleeps. He is always with us. He is the one who is our God and watches over us, loves us, and protects us. But there is one condition. We have to have our hope in Him. It is the Lord that has to build our house. It is in Him we need to have our hope, and everything will be all right. Our story that we read today is the tail end of a famous person in the Bible called Naaman. He was a great general. He is introduced at the beginning of chapter 5 as Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was highly regarded of all the people, among all the people, but by the king he served also. He was a treasure to the whole nation. But in the same sentence, it concludes by saying, he suffered from leprosy. So what a strange juxtaposition this is. How paradoxical this is. He is a person who went as high as any human being could ever go in a lifetime. But he is experiencing a problem that he can't find the answer to. The hope that he had, obviously, was to shed of this illness that he had, this problem that he had. He was somebody who is well known, who is very powerful, so he must have tried all the doctors that are available to him. He must have tried all of the different remedies. He must have tried taking medicine and putting medicine on his body. He must have tried everything possible, possibly available for any human being, but none of these things to any avail. Our story reminds us that in his household there was a young girl servant whom they had taken from Israel. She was young, but she was a person of faith. She knew something that Naaman didn't know. She knew God. She knew God is her God, and also God is his God. And God can do miracles. Human beings can't do miracles. No matter how great they are, no matter how rich they are, no matter how powerful they are, once again, they are world-bound. They are circumstance-bound, and they are time-bound. But she knew something that is infinitely more powerful than this great general. What a strange juxtaposition in that household that is also. And this young girl servant tells this great general, you need to do this. And because he wants to be healed, he tried everything. Well, why not this one? So she says, well, if you go to Israel and find the man of God. She was talking about Elisha, of course, the prophet Elisha. But she did not indicate the name. She simply said, the man of God in Israel. He will be able to take care of your problem for you. So in essence, what she was saying was, if you're seeking out a man of God, who is a man of God? He is a vehicle of God, isn't he? Yeah. He is fully entrusted his life to God, and God fully uses him. His life is not his own anymore. It's an extension of God himself in everything that he says and everything that he does. That's what she was talking about. You go find the man of God. What in essence she was saying was, you go to God. If you go to God, God will take care of your problem. But he didn't get it. He simply thought, okay, go to Israel, man of God over there. Oh, who's the most powerful person over there? Who is the richest person over there? Who might have more resources than anybody else? It must be the king. So he tells his own king, I'm going to go see this king. And the king of Aram also agrees, well, obviously you're going to have to go see him. He'll probably be able to help you in ways that we weren't able to so far. So brings a lot of gifts to him and goes to this person, this king in Israel. And the king gets very, very angry. And the king says, who do you think I am? He wasn't a very great man of faith in his generation as a king of Israel either, but he knew at least this much theology, that God is the only one who made us. God is the only one who can protect us, and God is the only one who can through his miracle, healed this kind of an illness. He's saying, why are you coming to me? I can't do this. And then he begins to wonder, this king of Aram, Aram and Israel, they had kind of a love-hate relationship throughout history. Their blood was mixed in many ways, and the language of Aram was used by that whole region at one time. They traded and they communicated with each other, exchanged resources a lot, but they also at other times were at war with one another too. That's why it was kind of a love-hate relationship. But at this time, it was a peaceful time. But in the back of the king's minds, they were always looking over their shoulders to make sure that they're not going to be ambushed by the other country. So all of a sudden, why is he coming to me with this kind of a request? Wait a minute, is there something up his sleeve? Is he conspiring some kind of an attack toward us? He becomes very, very suspicious. So hearing all this, Elisha, the true man of God, who is the speaker of God, who is the instrument of God, says, oh, he came here to see me. The girl sent him to me. He needs to come to me. Once again, he's not saying me, Elisha, the man. He needs to come to me, and I will help him. I will help him meet God. I will help God's hand of miracle, his hand of healing to touch him. That's all he had in his mind. So Naaman goes to him, and Naaman, when he comes to him, hearing about how Naaman was at his doorsteps, Elisha says to his servant, he doesn't even come out to greet him himself. He tells his servants, he says to them, well, go tell him, go submerge your body in the river Jordan 7 times, and you're going to be healed. And all of a sudden, Naaman completely forgets why he came. He came to be healed. He had a great need. It was a hope that wasn't being fulfilled, and he needed to surrender to God, and now he knows that he needs to do that. But who was he? He was always regarded as the highest. He was always regarded as the most powerful. In every relationship, everybody bowed down to him. When Elisha didn't even come outside to greet him, he was expecting some kind of a military formation to come out and bow down to him at first. And Elisha, because this great man came, that he would exercise some kind of a ritual that is befitting to the most important, highest, powerful person. Elisha wasn't doing any of these things. That the pride that Naaman had was truly being revealed here. And Elisha doesn't budge, doesn't come out. So Naaman becomes very angry. And he completely forgets why he came in the first place. Go wash myself in the river Jordan. In our country, there are bigger, better rivers. If I had to do that, and if this so-called man of God isn't even going to come out and respect me and do the proper things, I don't want to have anything to do with here. Let's just go back. He begins to turn around and walk away. But his servant said, wait a minute. We came here to take care of this illness that we have here. We need to take care of this. We have hope here. We came this far, and we found out it wasn't the king, it was God. Maybe God can help us. Why don't we do this? If it was something very difficult to make your pain and your illness go away, wouldn't you do it? It was just simply dunking yourself in this river Jordan. It's not a difficult thing to do. Let's just at least do this. Let's just try this. What can we lose? There's nothing we can lose, but we have all the things to gain if what God says is true. If that girl, what she said is true, who knows? Maybe God can work a miracle in our lives. For the first time in Naaman's life, he lets down his guard. He surrenders to God. He lets down his pride, a facade that was symbol of his greatness and power and the highest position among all the people. He always felt these things were reasons for hope in his life. And even when he went across the national border to another country, he thought it was the symbol of greatness, the king of that country, that I'm going to go and see. He really believed that, but it was the driving pride that he had all of his life. He let all these things down and simply surrender to God. First time in his life, people were able to see humility in him. First time in his life, people were able to see total humility and surrender and obedience to God. And as he did that, look at verse 14 one more time. Verse 14, it says, "So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. His flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean." One of the greatest men of his generation, a problem that he had, he could not take care of, was taken care of. As a result of not being powerful, seeming powerful, ruling people left and right, what to do, and all the people revering him and bowing down to him. None of these things could take care of his life's problems, but his total surrender, total humility, total obedience to God made this possible. And look at his faith confession in the following verse, verse 15. "Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company. He came and stood before him and said, 'Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Please accept a present from your servant.'" He is making a faith confession. He met God. He is confessing God is the true God. And in him, we have to be humble. In him, we have to be obedient. Then God will not only love us and protect us and accompany us, but even those problems, those reasons for hope that we wanted it to just go away, be taken care of all of our lives. Nobody, no resources, even the mightiest resources that I know could not take care of. As we surrender to God, God goes to work in our lives. Through his miracle, God makes our lives whole. And today we become whole, and our future life outlook becomes filled with hope and power in hope that only God can give to us. May you be restored of the gift of hope only in God. In order for you to embrace this power of miraculous hands of God in your life, may you make a decision this morning to surrender to God, to be obedient to God, and truly be humble to God. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for salvation in you. We thank you for your love. We thank you for being our strength when we are weak. We thank you for always approaching us with your healing hands and hands of restoration. Every day, in all life circumstances, especially when we are truly hoping that there is certain change in our lives, a problem that needs to be taken care of, a weakness that needs to be restored of strength. May we look to you. May we find true hope in you. May we treasure hope in you as the most precious. I pray these things in your Son, Jesus Christ's name.